Absurdism, a resonating word from the depths of 20th century intellectual chaos, is a rebellion against the pursuit of meaning in life, which fundamentally may be without any meaning at all. The video you are about to delve into is not a typical journey. It is an odyssey of thought ready to shake the foundations of your beliefs. Since Albert Camus spelled out the word absurd and danced with the idea of existence without any real purpose, absurdism has invited us to peek into the cold mirror of a world that often seems indifferent. Under this boundless sky, we search in vain for cosmic signs that will guide our actions towards higher goals. However, is this search truly in vain? From within this darkness, do we not find the light of paradoxical freedom? In this video, we will deconstruct the canvas of life that seems filled with absurdity. Are Camus and his allies in thought correct when they say that Sisyphus even smiles, even in the midst of the never-ending burden? Be prepared for an exploration that will not only challenge the mind but also beckon the soul into a slightly ironic dance with the absurdity of our own existence. 1. What is the philosophy of absurdism? Absurdism is a philosophical thought stream closely linked with existentialism and nihilism, considering that humanity's quest to find meaning in a fundamentally meaningless universe is futile and therefore absurd or nonsensical. This concept was largely formulated through the writings of novelist and philosopher Albert Camus, particularly in his work The Myth of Sisyphus, published in 1942. Where he depicts Sisyphus' futile effort to roll a large stone to the top of a hill, only to fail and start again. The theory of absurdism acknowledges that while humans long for a coherent and meaningful existence, the reality of the universe is cold and indifferent to these human needs. The core challenge of absurdism is to acknowledge the absurdity of existence without leading to despair or nihilism. Camus concludes that although our existence may seem futile, we need not despair. There are three possible ways to respond to this absurd situation according to Camus. First, suicide, which is a rejection of absurdity. Second, leap of faith, often interpreted as accepting religious dogma as a way to escape absurdity. And third, full acceptance of the absurd, which Camus advocated. He advocated for the third option, seeking meaning in human experience itself and in rebellion against absurd conditions. Critical thinking about absurdism raises questions about the possibility of objective and subjective meaning. Can humans create their own meaning in life? Does the absence of universal meaning reduce all individual values and purposes to futility? Absurdism challenges us to live without the promise of greater meaning or metaphysical structures, but does not advocate for empty despair or nihilism. Absurdism also has strong roots in literary tradition. Works like Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett bring themes of absurdism onto the stage, portraying characters trapped in meaningless, repetitive, and ludicrous situations. In the field of art, absurdism inspires works that question conventions and assumptions about reality, often with dark and ironic humor. In modern context, absurdism finds its relevance in social and existential challenges. The information age and social media often raise questions about authenticity and the search for meaning. In the midst of contrasting and often contradictory information clutter, meaning and truth may seem increasingly elusive, reinforcing the captivating feeling of absurdity. Thus, absurdism is not merely a wave of philosophical pessimism, but an invitation to reflect deeper on human existence and to find courage and freedom in confronting the void in which we stand, while also reconsidering the significance we attribute to our daily activities. 2. History of the philosophy of absurdism. Absurdism, with deep historical roots often associated with 20th century thought. Although the concept of absurdity has emerged throughout human thought history, especially in the works of philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard, absurdism as a specific movement was popularized by the French writer and philosopher Albert Camus. In historical context, absurdism emerged post-World War II, a period characterized by chaos and doubt about traditional values, as well as questions about the meaning and purpose of life. The world, having just witnessed brutality and mass destruction, provided fertile ground for Camus to explore and articulate a worldview that considers human efforts to find meaning in their existence as futile because there is no objective meaning or purpose to be found in the cold and indifferent universe. Camus presents absurdism in his most influential work, The Myth of Sisyphus. He portrays absurdity as a conflict between humanity's relentless quest for meaning and truth and a universe that remains silent and offers no answers. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was condemned to push a large rock uphill, only to watch it roll back down every time it reached the top. Similar to Sisyphus, humans are trapped in a cycle that is endless and meaningless. Sisyphus, in Greek mythology, was punished by the gods to push a heavy stone uphill, only to watch the stone roll back down every time it reached the top. This punishment was inflicted upon him because of Sisyphus's cunning and hubris in challenging the gods. It's a perfect analogy for the human condition, according to Camus, where human effort and struggle seem futile in the broader scheme of life itself. In the philosophy of absurdism, absurdity arises from the conflict between human pursuit of meaning, hope, or value and the universe's cold rejection of any justification for such pursuits. This is similar to Sisyphus and the burden of the rock he pushes, a burden that never reaches its culmination. Human endeavor, seeking harmony in a world that offers no answers, illustrates the absurd condition explored by Camus. The happy Sisyphus symbolizes our resistance. Despite the futility of his actions, Sisyphus finds peace in rebellion and acceptance of his fate. This happiness stems from his acceptance of the absurd conditions of his life, not with false hopes of redemption, but through courage in confronting absurdity. Camus does not see awareness of the absurd as the end of one individual's intellectual journey, but as the starting point. From the awareness of absurdity, three possible responses emerge according to Camus: suicide, faith, or rebellion. He rejects the first two options as escapes from absurdity and praises the latter. Rebellion in this context is the full acceptance of absurdity and continuing to live with passion and integrity even without hope of resolution or redemption. Absurdism does not end with Camus. Its influence permeates various fields such as theater through playwrights like Samuel Beckett and Eugeni Ionesco, who became major figures in the theatre of the absurd, presenting works that depict the absurdity of life through non-linear plots and characters often trapped in irrational or purposeless situations. Critics of absurdism often focus on its perceived nihilistic views. However, proponents argue that this philosophy demands intellectual honesty and emotional courage to confront reality without illusions. Through its history, absurdism invites us to acknowledge the uncertainty and chaos of life while still approaching it with bold creativity and challenging attitudes. As a contribution to modern critical thought, absurdism poses the challenge of continually determining values in life despite facing the silence of the universe. This demonstrates its ongoing relevance, especially when confronted with seemingly unsolvable and often absurd global situations. 3. Who is Albert Camus? Albert Camus is a perspective that responds to the existential dilemma of human quest for meaning in a seemingly purposeless or directionless life. Camus, a French writer and philosopher born in 1913 and died in 1960, developed this philosophy by delving into the irony between human desire for clarity and the inevitable uncertainty of reality. Camus did not consider himself an existential philosopher, but he is sometimes included in that category because of the themes he explores. Unlike some existentialist thinkers who seek meaning or essence in existence, Camus accepts the premise that life may not have ultimate meaning. His works, such as The Stranger and The Myth of Sisyphus, illustrate his view of the absurdity of life. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus uses the analogy of Sisyphus as a metaphor for the human condition. He views Sisyphus, who was condemned by the Greek gods to push a large rock up a hill only to have it roll back every time it nears the top, as a symbol of human resilience in the face of endless repetition. Camus grew up in Algeria with a modest background, an experience that shaped his views on isolation and struggle. This is reflected in his exploration of absurdity and isolation in his work. Camus was also politically active, opposing totalitarianism and being a voice for individual freedom. Ultimately, Camus rejects nihilistic despair. He believes that acknowledgement of the absurdity of life should not lead one to despair but should trigger rebellion. A commitment to irreplaceable values in life, even without guarantees that our efforts will yield eternal or significant results. He advocates for living authentically by embracing the absurdity of life as rebellion, rather than seeking escape through religion, mysticism, or other solutions that promise false clarity. Criticism of Camus's views often reflects the question of whether acceptance of quintessential absurdity is a form of resignation or, conversely, an empowering act. Nevertheless, the enduring relevance of absurdism today lies in its call to question and confront life with awareness, courage, and honesty, a message that feels increasingly important in this fast-paced and often bewildering world. 3. Who is Albert Camus? Albert Camus is a perspective that responds to the existential dilemma of human quest for meaning in a seemingly purposeless or directionless life. Camus, a French writer and philosopher born in 1913 and died in 1960, developed this philosophy by delving into the irony between human desire for clarity and the inevitable uncertainty of reality. Camus did not consider himself an existential philosopher, but he is sometimes included in that category because of the themes he explores. Unlike some existentialist thinkers who seek meaning or essence in existence, Camus accepts the premise that life may not have ultimate meaning. His works, such as The Stranger and The Myth of Sisyphus, illustrate his view of the absurdity of life. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus uses the analogy of Sisyphus as a metaphor for the human condition. He views Sisyphus, who was condemned by the Greek gods to push a large rock up a hill only to have it roll back every time it nears the top, as a symbol of human resilience in the face of endless repetition. Camus grew up in Algeria with a modest background, an experience that shaped his views on isolation and struggle. This is reflected in his exploration of absurdity and isolation in his work. Camus was also politically active, opposing totalitarianism and being a voice for individual freedom. Ultimately, Camus rejects nihilistic despair. He believes that acknowledgement of the absurdity of life should not lead one to despair but should trigger rebellion. A commitment to irreplaceable values in life, even without guarantees that our efforts will yield eternal or significant results. He advocates for living authentically by embracing the absurdity of life as rebellion, rather than seeking escape through religion, mysticism, or other solutions that promise false clarity. Criticism of Camus's views often reflects the question of whether acceptance of quintessential absurdity is a form of resignation or, conversely, an empowering act. Nevertheless, the enduring relevance of absurdism today lies in its call to question and confront life with awareness, courage, and honesty, a message that feels increasingly important in this fast-paced and often bewildering world. 4. Albert Camus's ideas. Absurdity in Camus's terminology is the gap between individuals' aspirations for harmony and enlightenment, and the objective emptiness of existence they encounter. In his view, the universe is essentially a nonsensical place, and humans expend energy in vain searching for order and meaning. Camus argues that acknowledging the absurdity of life does not mean surrender. Instead, he advocates for a response that is stirring. This is reflected in the analogy of Sisyphus, who in Greek mythology was condemned to push a giant rock up a hill, only to watch it roll back every time it reached the top. Camus argues that although Sisyphus is faced with a futile and endless task, he can find meaning in rebellion and the consciousness that occurs during the struggle. By saying we must imagine Sisyphus as a happy man, Camus urges us to find freedom and satisfaction in the rebellion itself, rather than expecting ultimate victory or liberation from absurdity. Camus also rejects nihilism, the view that life has no value or meaning at all, as an inadequate response to absurdity. Instead, he urges humans to live passionately and enjoy human experiences even while subject to absurd conditions. Camus' Absurdism, therefore, is a philosophy that asks us to maintain moral integrity, seek justice, and love life, while remaining aware that our efforts may not yield universal meaning or resolution. Although Camus does not offer fatalistic or pessimistic solutions, he offers enlightenment. In rebellion, exploration, and human passion, we individually define our own meaning, which, though subjective, is real and valuable. Camus' challenge is for us to live a life fully, acknowledging our limitations and potentials, and acting with courage in the face of existential absurdity, making each of us, in our own way, like the happy Sisyphus. 1.5. The absurd solution. According to Camus, the absurd arises from the collision between two things: the natural human desire to seek meaning and order on one hand, and the silent, empty universe on the other. The philosophy of absurdism rejects the acknowledgement that life is fundamentally meaningless, as nihilism teaches, but also denies the existence of any proven universal meaning or purpose. Instead of surrendering or seeking divine or metaphysical answers, absurdism calls individuals to confront absurdity with rebellion, freedom, and passion. Camus argues that although we may not find intrinsic meaning in life, we still have the freedom to establish our own lives with subjective meaning. Rebellion here means challenging the absurd conditions of life by living authentically. Camus encourages individuals to become absurd heroes who bravely defy and live fully despite facing absurdity. Camus' proposed solution to the absurd problem can be seen as a spiritual revolution attitude, where one acknowledges the absurdity of life but chooses to seek satisfaction and beauty in human experiences. It is based on a conscious effort to keep moving forward and choose to live with integrity without false hopes of objective meaning or divine redemption. Therefore, absurdism acts as a call to live authentically and passionately. It is a philosophy that is highly relevant in modern times, where big questions about meaning and purpose often receive more questions than answers. Faced with this uncertainty, absurdism offers a tool to navigate existential dilemmas by embracing uncertainty, celebrating small moments, and creating our own values. In other words, absurdism does not offer easy solutions or escape from absurdity. Instead, it suggests an approach that embraces acceptance and struggle against the absurd nature of our existence with awareness and heroic resistance, full of enthusiasm to seek personal freedom and happiness, even though ultimately everything seems contradictory. 6. Characteristics of absurdism. Camus analyzes the absurd from three different perspectives: revolt, freedom, and passion, which he presents in his work The Myth of Sisyphus. Revolt here is not about rebellion against authority, but about accepting without fear the absurdity of existence. This is the first step towards living authentically. Freedom speaks to the freedom individuals have in choosing how to react to the awareness of absurdity. Liberated from the hope of objective meaning or eternity, individuals are free to determine the values and meaning of their own lives. Passion, on the other hand, is a full commitment to everyday life experiences. Camus states that although life intrinsically lacks meaning, the only certain truth is the real experience we have in the present moment, and thus we should live it as intensely as possible. Camus' approach to absurdism explicitly rejects nihilism, the belief that life has no value or meaning at all. Absurdism differs in its approach to the absence of meaning, not with despair, but with a self-made and courageous search for meaning while acknowledging the limits of our knowledge. Additionally, in the work The Rebel, Camus explains that rebellion against absurdity also means examining the boundaries of human freedom and solidarity in creating shared meaning. Overall, Camus's absurdism invites us to live life amidst absurdity without illusions or false hopes, but with self-resilience and integrity, establishing our own values in the uncertainty that underlies our existence. Absurdism doesn't provide comforting answers but rather challenges us to find courage and clarity amidst existential uncertainty. Ending our journey through the maze of absurdism's thoughts, we stand at the peak of observation, much like Sisyphus and his rock. The philosophy that preserves existential contradictions between humanity's thirst for meaning and the silent void of the universe is not merely endless despair. Instead, absurdism is a call to muster the courage to free ourselves from the shackles of futile hope. We, the existential explorers, often find ourselves oppressed by meaningless routines, feeling alienated amidst superficial cheer. However, absurdism is not an invitation to abandon effort or resign to nihilism. Rather, Albert Camus challenges us to imagine Sisyphus happy, to find autonomy in rebellion, embracing the challenge to keep pushing our respective rocks. Our burdens, the work we do, our relationships, our desires, may never yield absolute clarity of meaning, but therein lies absurdism's paradoxical freedom. In accepting this transience, we can create personal moments of meaning. Thus, we are liberated from the monolithic quest for life's meaning and invited to appreciate the aesthetics of the journey, not just the destination. Realizing that every endeavor contains an element of the absurd guides us to live more authentically. Remember, absurdism urges us to be rebels, to keep searching, creating, and enjoying life despite the void. Let our lives, complete with contradictions and oddities, be the brave canvas on which we paint our own meanings. We may not be able to answer all the questions about why we exist or what the purpose of it all is. However, with an understanding and acceptance of the absurd, we gain the strength to craft our own life narratives, to live to the point of tears, not out of sadness, but out of our courage to challenge uncertainty. So, when you find yourself as Sisyphus in your own narrative, remember that pushing that rock uphill is an act full of hope. With each push, our search for meaning, meaning we create, meaning we find in the process, and meaning we share with others, is indeed evidence of human vitality to keep struggling, keep growing, keep learning. And perhaps in Sisyphus's knowing smile, we find the courage to smile back at the absurd. That's all. See you soon. Thank you.